I hate taking notes just like everyone else, right? Like I'm very bad at talking to someone and trying to type at the same time, stressed out, trying to remember everything, and frustrated when I go back 2 weeks later and see that, oh, I don't really remember exactly which meeting this was. And a lot of the amazing kind of nuance that I want to share with my team, the emotional reaction from the customers or positive and negatively, just falls flat when you turn it into a few bullet points. And so it's kind of like, gosh, wouldn't it be, can we have a better system for this? Don't we have technology that today that can do that? My friend has this analogy. It's like, think about AI as a person. And if you look at GPT-3, that person was probably like a 15-year-old sort of thing. Now with like GPT-4, Quad 3.7, you could think of it as like a grad, like an undergrad student. And so like, what would a good undergrad be able to accomplish sort of thing? And if you think about it that way, I think it's actually the right mental model for figuring out what do I want to hire AI to do for me. There's an infinite number of things you could work on, you could improve about your business. That's not the problem. The problem is like, how do I find the 2 or 3 things that are really going to move it 10% this month?
Yeah. Welcome to Leading to Profit. I'm your host, Kevin Bees, and I've dedicated my career to empowering business leaders like you with the leadership skills, performance psychology they need to build thriving businesses. Are you ready for immediately actionable strategies from world-class profit leaders? Let's dive in. This is Leading to Profit. Welcome to episode number 272 of Leading to Profit. Today we have Richard White. Richard is the founder and CEO of Fathom.video. He's calling in today from San Francisco in California. And Fathom.video is a free app that records, transcribes, and highlights your calls so you can focus on the conversation instead of taking notes. Now, Fathom is only one of 50 Zoom app launch partners and is one of a small handful of companies that Zoom is invested in directly via the Zoom Apps Fund. Now, prior to Fathom, Richard founded User Voice, one of the leading platforms that technology companies from startups to the Fortune 500 use for managing customer feedback, making strategic product decisions. User Voice was notable for being the company that originally invented the feedback tabs shown on the side of millions of websites around the world today. Richard is passionate about designing intuitive product tools with delightful user experiences. And as a user of Fathom myself, I can say that he succeeded very well in that. So Richard, welcome to the call today.
Kevin, thanks for having me.
Richard, I know you started your journey with Fathom back in 2020. You probably would have been ahead of the curve by what most people expect. I think probably a lot of us only began to have awareness of AI and what was happening in the world when OpenAI came out, and that was probably what, 21, 22, I would think.
22, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So tell us about your vision. How did you have the foresight? How were you able to start creating such an amazing tool so early in the journey?
Yeah, I think, everyone thinks we're kind of a pandemic product because it kind of makes sense, right? Everyone's on Zoom, but I actually came up with the idea right before the pandemic, early 2020. I was just on a bunch of Zoom calls myself. I hate taking notes just like everyone else, right? Like I'm very bad at talking to someone and trying to type at the same time, stressed out, trying to remember everything, and frustrated when I go back 2 weeks later and see that, oh, I don't really remember exactly which meeting this was. And a lot of the amazing kind of nuance that I want to share with my team, the emotional reaction from the customers or positive and negatively, just falls flat when you turn it into a few bullet points. And so it's kind of like, gosh, wouldn't it be, can we have a better system for this? Don't we have technology that today that can do that? And there were some people in the space that are really expensive products. They're really focused on really high-end salespeople and stuff like that. We said, gosh, we think this is a problem everyone has. Everyone hates taking notes. Everyone would be much less stressed out if they could just have a meeting and an AI did it for you. And you're right. In 2020, when we got started, AI actually was like a dirty word. I remember we put AI in our product name in 2021, and a lot of my investors were like, don't do that. No one likes AI, right? It's hard to remember now, but the first wave of quote unquote AI products came out like 2015 to 2017, and they were very mediocre, right? They were very underwhelming, I think, for the most part. We kind of were pretty confident that AI was going to get really good. We also were pretty confident that transcription is going to get not only really good, but really cheap. And we could kind of afford to give away this product for free and do that before really anyone else thought to do that, right? At the time, it was a very expensive product to run. And so we had this foresight that I think through my network, I knew what OpenAI was doing and had a lot of confidence that like, no, AI is going to get really good. That first wave was just kind of what every first wave is, right? Which is like a little more marketing than product. We felt very confident we're going to go build this product. And we kind of also felt confident that if we waited till when AI was really good and transcription was free, it would be too late to start this company. It's a classic case, like you need to start the product almost 2 or 3 years before that point to do all the other stuff so that you kind of run out the window and kind of hope that it opens by the time you try to dive out of it.
Well, and it sounds like you probably got your timing very well there. I guess more and more people are having awareness of AI, and it's probably not something that you can go too long without hearing about. And I think a lot of the community listening are dabbling with a few bits and pieces in AI, but also feeling overwhelmed by all the different array of choices. I think I looked on there's an AI for that, and I think now there's something like 30 odd different thousand AI tools available and growing by thousands every week, I think. So where should we be looking? Where should we be putting our energy in AI, and what can we expect to come in the future?
Yeah, we did get very fortunate with the timing, right? I think it was right around GPT-4, which is kind of mid 2023, when AI got to a point where it can write, if you give it a transcript from a meeting, it can write better notes than most humans, right? And that was the real tipping point for our business, right? And we kind of built up to that point. And that kind of stuff is like right up the fairway for AI. It's really good at that. It's really good at like, let me take a lot of input here, or moderate amount of input, right? If you get too much input, it struggles. But if you give it, and we have a transcript for a 30-minute, 60-minute call, it can answer, it can be very intelligent about that. I always tell people to think about AI. My friend has this analogy. It's like, think about AI as a person. And if you look at GPT-3, that person was probably like a 15-year-old sort of thing. Now it's like GPT-4, Claude 3.7. You could think of it as like a grad, like an undergrad student, right? And so like, what would a good undergrad be able to accomplish, sort of thing? And if you think about it that way, I think it's actually the right mental model for figuring out, what do I want to hire AI to do for me? If you wouldn't hire, I would hire think of like a, valedictorian level grad, undergrad to take notes for me on a meeting, right? Like, and I'm sure probably about a year we'll get to probably like graduate level sort of thing. But that's like the mental model I have. It's like, okay, what tasks do you have that if you had a really good intern, they could absolutely crush, right? And so I think that works pretty well for a lot of use cases.
It's a really great question. So if you had a really good intern, could they crush this? If so, then we probably should be leaning into AI and seeing if AI could do that. Tell us more about Fathom. You've grown very rapidly over that period of time. How many users do you have, and where do you see the product going and the business going from here?
Yeah, I mean, we have hundreds of thousands of users at this point on a regular basis, which is, to me, more than even revenue. I would get really gratified by building something that gets used by so many folks and get so many positive comments on it. What's really exciting for us is kind of where, we built this business to basically surf this AI wave. We kind of hung out in the ocean for a bit before the wave showed up, but we kind of caught it at the right time. And now we're really surfing on that wave. And like you mentioned, about 18 months ago was when you got to a point where AI can write better notes than the most humans. And now we're at the point where we're starting to do things not just on an individual meeting, but across a big body of meetings. So we have a separate product we call Team Edition when you want to, hey, I've got a company and I want all of my company's sales recordings or customer success meetings or engineering stand-ups in a kind of common workspace. And now we're at a point where an AI can actually do something useful with that. For example, the other day, from an engineering perspective, we asked the question of like, hey, what's the history of like transcription engines we've used at Fathom? And it was able to look back over all of our all hands, all of our engineering meetings over 4 years and write a nice like 5-page article about like, here's exactly all the things we've done in the past. We've also been able to ask it things like, hey, can you find me every time we had a pricing discussion that didn't go well? Because it now understands kind of tone and intent over the last 6 months in the sales process. And it finds me all those discussions and put them into like a playlist for me. So it's really exciting. We're now at this place where AI can start, I think, not just taking notes on your meetings, but actually helping you spot trends, helping you find insights, helping you, find that needle in the haystack kind of insight that's going to kind of drive more profitability or efficiency in your business. And that's not something the AI is going to do, honestly, even 6 to 9 months ago.
Yeah, okay. And so the power is growing, at a very rapid pace. I really like to highlight something that you've made a point on there. You're recording all of your internal meetings and your own internal data, well, and probably your external meetings as well, because you can then interrogate that and use that. Now, I think about, GPTs. Right now we're using, say, Chat GPT as an example. But I guess we're going to come to the stage where we're going to want to have our own GPTs. We're going to want to train our models on our data. So something like Fathom is probably critical for us to start capturing that. So we have a body of information to train our AI on.
Yeah. I think that's 100% where things are, right? And that's what's really exciting for us. Like we think that set of meeting information, that meeting content is probably one of the biggest data sets in any company, right?
Mm.
Bigger than email, bigger than Slack. There's a lot of data that gets communicated, right? Like we spend most of us half our weeks on meetings, right? And think about all the important things in discussions. So we think it's a really interesting data source. We've also done some fun stuff internally, like we train our own. There's a thing called Rich GPT that my ops team made, where they trained it on like all of our like all hands. They've also trained it on all of the podcasts I've done. And so they sometimes use to ask, what would Rich think of this? Or use it to generate social media content for me or things like that. So it is pretty cool when you start coming up with these things where it's like not just a representative of the entire org, but representative of you, right? Here's your past kind of thoughts and lessons and how you tend to operate.
That's very important. It kind of makes sense then that we should be recording everything because we want to be building our own rich GPTs, and now you're calling it rich because of course you're Richard White, but I actually like that is a rich GPT, is rich on your data, is rich on your knowledge and your insights. So I think we should all have our own rich GPTs, and having, a meeting recorder with you like this is awesome. I know I've seen in the marketplace hardware tools that kind of sit on, people's, I think it was like the plate or something, and it can go around and start listening as well. So do you have any aspirations to evolve your service into a hardware like that as well?
Yeah. So I think, I've seen some folks that do kind of like pendants people wear that are always on. And I think that's interesting, but I don't know that we're societally ready for that. Right. Like I think, an always on recorder is a little too dystopian, I think, for most people's taste. Yeah. However, I would say that we started off, focused exclusively on Zoom. And then the last couple of years, we added Google Meet, Microsoft Teams support. We're adding support for more different types of communication mediums. And now we're starting to look at support for in-person meetings, right? And that's another place where historically the AI really struggles. It's really hard to just hear three people talking and figure out who was who. But the AIs have gotten a lot better at that. It's called speaker diarization in the last 6 to 12 months. And so now we're kind of reevaluating. Oh, okay. I think one of the big kind of internal theses we have around AI is like, we don't always want to be the first product to launch an AI feature. I actually think that the hardest part about building AI features is getting the accuracy right, because it's really easy to get the AI to say something. And so, and I don't even mean it's going to like hallucinate, but something, maybe it's correct, but it's really verbose, or it's concise, but it loses a lot of the nuance, right, that you want. And so we have a whole team that spends a lot of time really manually reviewing a lot of these AI outputs to make sure they're really good. And I think that's, it's almost fun. It's kind of turned this more, I've done software for 20 years. And it's the first time it feels like a little bit of R&D, like you're kind of driven by what the technology can do, and a little bit of like art and craftsmanship, right? Where you really have to, I think this is why a lot of the big companies, AI products or AI add-ons fall flat, is because they don't do they don't take it to the next step. They're like, oh, it spits out something cool, ship it, right? And so we have this intentional strategy of we kind of are a late adopter of a lot of these things because we don't want to ship an AI feature to our users until we think it's really, really good. And we'd rather not ship it than ship something that's kind of like mediocre.
Quick question. Are you leaving profits on the table? Discover where hidden profit leaks are draining your business and how to stop them. Download my free report, Stop Leaking Profits, at www.profit.gifts, and start maximizing your profit today. Now, back to the show. Yeah, good. I like that. And, because the risk is you're going to ship something that's mediocre and then people lose trust in you and faith in you and they're gone. You're not going to get them back.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I think especially in this day and age when there are, because you said 30,000 AI products, right? I don't want to promise I can do a job for you that I really can't do yet, because you're not going to come back, 3 more times and check to see, did it get any better, right? You're going to try it once and you're like, mediocre, not good enough.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And move on to the next one. There's enough competitors out there for that.
Mm-hmm.
From a leader's perspective, you're sharing this really great insight that we should be capturing our data in these meetings and maybe in the future in our physical meetings as well. How should we be thinking about leadership in the future? What should we be thinking about in terms of AI? What should we be leveraging? How should we be position ourselves to do the best?
I think a lot of historical leadership it's all about, giving people shared context, right? Whether it's like making sure we all are on the same page in terms of our goals, why we have those goals, et cetera, et cetera. And, to tie back to meetings, meetings were the predominant way we disseminate information in organizations, right? But sometimes that's like not the best way to do it, right? We end up having meetings where, I don't know, 50% of the meeting, people in the meeting didn't need to be there in real time,
Yeah.
right? They could have consumed it some other place. And so we're trying to build towards this world where I think instead of kind of choosing the time and place where people get that shared context, they can kind of subscribe to the context they need, even in the meetings they're not in, right? And I think my two big thoughts on meetings, everyone loves to hate on meetings. And it's easy to hate on meetings because we hate all the work we have to do for every meeting. We love the discussion. We hate the pre-work. We hate the post-work, right? We hate all the data entry. And we also hate being on meetings where I don't really need to be here, right? Like I just needed to hear this 5-minute segment of this hour-long meeting. And so I think we're moving with AI. We're already doing a lot of that first part, which is you can just speak stuff into existence, and AI like Fathom will write the action items, write the note, fill in your CRM. And now we're moving to is like okay, we can have a 3-person meeting instead of a 10-person meeting. And we can be like, oh, Tim needed to hear this last 5 minutes. And Tim will just get that clip. Tim will have almost his own agent that's going out there and auditing all the other kind of department team lead meetings and bringing back Tim's context. And so now as a leader, I don't have to spend as much time forcing the shared context and thinking about this. I'm just empowering everyone in the org to basically have AIs that'll deliver the context they need. This also is my bias. I'm a big fan of push decisions down in the org as much as possible. And I try to basically at my level bound the box, as I say it, right? Like here's the things we want, here's the problems we want to solve, and here's the problems we don't want to solve. For example, in the first year of Fathom, we knew we'd have a team product at some point. We knew that's how we make money. But I was like, we're not even going to worry about that until we have a really killer single person individual use product. And so my job is to bound the box. Like, okay, we're doing this. We're focused on these metrics. We're focused on these customer base. But and we're focused on these themes, right? Like here's the types of things we want to do product wise this year. But then I don't really want to be in all these decisions my sales team's making, my product team's making, my work team's making. I want them to make local decisions. And sometimes I'll pay some kind of like a collaboration tax where it's like, oh, different departments are doing something slightly different than the other one, or they're stepping on each other's toes a little bit. That's fine. I care about moving fast, and it's hard to move fast and be perfectly in sync. And so I just try to say, cool, I've bound the box so no one's wildly off the reservation. And within this bounded box, everyone's charged to pursue like what's the maximal highest leverage thing you can do to improve your department every month.
Oh, I love that question. So what is the maximum highest leverage thing you can do to improve your department every month? And there's a lot of trust in that. So I love how you call it a collaboration tax. So, we're moving fast. So actually things may not always be in sync and things may miss. And okay, we deal with that friction as we go through. As a leader, what's been your experience of working in this way? Because the immediate objection I feel from some of the people listening is like, hey, well, that takes a lot of trust. Maybe my team aren't capable to make those decisions. Maybe they make wrong decisions and it really negatively impacts, my business.
Well, that's where I think, there's a lot of emphasis on like, what are reversible decisions, right? And so most decisions are actually pretty reversible. And so, not reversible. Yeah, I think that hopefully that bubbles up to me, right? And I kind of empower my team like, hey, I'm happy for you to make mistakes as long as they're mistakes we can undo, right? If you find yourself at a fork in the road and you're like, oh, there's really no good undo button on this, great, bubble it up to me and let's make sure we get it right the first time. But that's like less than 5% of decisions I found. And that's probably being generous. So I think it's having a tolerance for people to make mistakes. And I think that's actually probably something we as leaders struggle with sometimes, right? It's like we almost want to protect our teams from making mistakes when that's not how they learn. So I think about myself, I was in Boy Scouts, so I think of myself as a quartermaster. I'm here to provide context and capital and, when you need it, backing you up on some key decision you're making. But you're the rock star, not me, right? You and your team. And that's what my managers want to think about the ICs. My managers aren't the rock stars. The ICs, it's the salesperson closing the deal. It's the engineer writing the line of code. And so all throughout the org, we almost invert it and be like, what do we do to make sure we help the person below us succeed the most?
I love that. And tell me a little bit about your recruitment or hiring process, because you see your team members as rock stars. Do you have a process to make sure you hire rock stars in the first place?
It's funny, I use that word, but we would probably, if anyone called themselves a rock star, we would probably like not hire them. One of the key things we look for is actually folks that are low ego. I think everyone wants to be people, right, that are like smart, high work ethic, resourceful, that sort of thing. But I think finding that coupled with folks that are humble and low ego and are willing to jump into whatever needs jumping into is one of the hardest parts of that Venn diagram. But yeah, I think also from a hiring perspective, again, going back to the world of AI, I have this vision for this company that we'd like to get to $100 million in revenue and have less than 150 employees. And I don't have that because it's like economically great, though it is, but because I've never seen really large companies be able to maintain that agility and momentum I described before. It's really hard to do that kind of like, empower the folks at the bottom when you're a 1,000-person company, right? So, for that reason, we try to hire as little as possible. And when we do hire, we try to hire really senior folks that still want to be ICs. We have a very limited kind of middle management layer, and we focus a lot on just like getting stuff done.
Amazing. And that would be a really fantastic size business for that many people. I hear recently Peter Diamandis and Salim Ismail having a conversation around this. And of course, I think they were predicting that it wouldn't be too far away before we have the first $1 billion 3-person company. So maybe the 150, maybe it's not enough aggression around that.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. I might have to move my goalposts. I think Sam Altman had the same thing. Who's going to be the first single person $1 billion company sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think three is probably smarter. But yeah, so I think when I said this message 2 or 3 years ago, people thought that was really audacious. And you're right. Now we don't think it's that insane. We can kind of see that from here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is insane. I think anyone on the call listening would be happy to have a $100 million company, 150 employees. You would be pretty profitable right there. And here's the important piece. You're serving a lot of people. To have that kind of revenue, you're making a major difference. And so with all this data and all this information that you're collecting, you're in a really great place to help serve and support them. Yeah, actually, on that note, from your perspective as a leader of this organization, each individual has their data. So I have my data from Fathom. I can interrogate it, use it. For you, with the aggregate, do you get a lot of great learnings and insights that you can use?
Not really, because one of the things we do is firewall off everyone's data from each other, right? And we kind of have, I think one of the big things people ask about a product like Fathom is, what are you going to do with my data? Especially when it's free, right? We had early on people be like, are you selling my data? No, we're not. Are you, doing something with it? The honest answer is no. And because, kind of privacy and confidentiality is so paramount to folks. I do think we'll probably have some opportunities over the next couple of years. We're making basically AIs that are really kind of trained on your data. There probably will be opportunities in the next year or two where if you do opt in to let us like train something on your data, you'll get an even smarter version of this, right? Where we might like train an AI that we use with other customers, but it won't know the details of your business. But if we did do that, it would have to be like opt in and like really, really locked down. So for that reason, it's kind of interesting. It's like, I think the data is really interesting on a per company basis, but it's hard to kind of, even if we wanted to, it's kind of hard to generalize that across the entire kind of population.
Yeah, got it. And sorry, one question I have around your business model then. So it's free. Is it free just at the beginning and then people can upgrade and buy additional features, or is it free ongoing?
So we have a plan that the majority of our users use, which is free and you can use it forever. And we think it's really important, where we will make our money, where we do make our money is when you say, hey, I want to get my entire team on this and I want to have that shared kind of repository of these meetings. And I want the AI learning off of that, right? And give me insights. So that's where we make money, not on getting an individual to pull out a credit card. We do have a premium version for individuals too, where you get more advanced meeting summaries and it'll automatically detect your action items. But frankly, we only charge that because the AI for that is expensive enough that we couldn't get away for free, right? And so we are totally fine. We really know we're going to make our money off of managers and teams, not individuals. And so we really try to make our free plan as robust as possible for that reason.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, cool. So very clear. So very clear. Wow, our time is flying by. I got so many more things I want to ask you as well. Let's ask about, we say on this show that the quality of the questions we ask ourselves impacts the quality of the life that we lead. With that being true, Richard, what's one question you asked that's had the biggest positive impact on your results or the results of the clients that you serve?
I mean, there's 2 questions I ask myself on a regular basis, usually like 6 months to a year though. And that is, am I uniquely qualified to help push this business forward? And is this business uniquely qualified to teach me something new? And so this is kind of how I have this litmus test of like, am I still the right leader for this company? And his company is still the right vehicle for me to continue to learn and grow as an entrepreneur. And I do that only on like a 6 month a year basis, because I think otherwise you can get stuck. I know a lot of folks get stuck in always this kind of like, should I be working on this? Should I be, is it the right business to work on? Should I go, they're kind of flooded with good ideas. They're always, sometimes thrashing about. And so I kind of set this SLA with myself that like, I will revisit this, but I only revisit this like annually. Right. And once I answer that question, I now recommit. I put my blinders on and I don't think about building any other businesses, and I just focus on this. And I think that works really well. The other one I ask on a more regular basis, just kind of, I have a very haphazard way of doing action items for myself. I mentioned before, I ask my team a lot, like, what's the highest leverage thing you can do this month? And actually, I want them to be asking that almost every day. And I really kind of lean into like, we don't try to plan too far out in the future, whether it's for our roadmap or even my own personal work stream, because every day I want to wake up and be like, what is the highest value thing I can do today? And not get kind of like, basically too attached to what I thought was going to be the highest leverage thing 3 months ago, right? Like, oh, I said I was going to do this, right? So I have this kind of action item process where I show this long list of stuff to do. And every day I kind of reshuffle to the top and things fall to the bottom. Every 6 months, I just delete the bottom. It's like, I think having a very lossy action, I find people that try to do every action item that comes across their desk just get lost, right? And so I think that's an important question to ask myself every day. What's the highest leverage thing I can do for the business today?
What's the highest leverage thing I can do for the business today? And the important thing is there, if something's sat at the bottom of that list for too long, just let it go.
Just delete it off. Yeah. And don't feel bad about it, right? Like,
yeah,
there's infinite number of things you could work on, you could improve about your business. That's not the problem. The problem is like, how do I find the 2 or 3 things that are really going to move it 10% this month?
Yeah. What's really going to move the needle? That's so important. Well, I have so many other questions, and I know we're going to do another few more minutes, but let's ask a little bit more about your experience in building the business. Like, you've really built an awesome team. You've done this more than once. You've had an idea for a product, you created the product and built the team, and you're doing this second time, maybe third time. What are some of the key insights or lessons that you take along the way from that? What are some things that we can be applying in our businesses today to have similar success?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's fun because I think every time I do a business, it feels like I'm speed running a video game I've played before, where I'm kind of like, oh, so much faster than the last time I did this, because I now have the experience to kind of like shortcut decisions and just make quick decisions. And it really comes down to me, like, how quickly can you make decisions about things? That's one side. And the other side is, how much can I constrain the problem about what I'm trying to solve? And I think probably the biggest piece of advice that I would give that's worked out well for me is, I see a lot of folks launch a new product and they're trying to do a lot of things at once, right? They're trying to build a product that that has good retention. People use day in, day out. They're trying to figure out how to get a bunch of new users. They're trying to figure out how to monetize all that usage, figure out what the pricing plans are. That stuff's hard. And so like, each one of those is like really hard. And so I tend to try to tackle those things in order, in serial. And so for Fathom, we started off, like I said, I didn't care about monetization. I knew it was going to be the team plan. We didn't worry about it. I didn't even worry about getting new users. We just, in the beginning, all we focused on, like, let's build a version of Fathom that I can use day in, day out, and that I can get 50 to 100 people to use day in, day out. And that took us literally like 8 to 9 months, like, because it was really buggy in the beginning and da-da-da. And so it took about 9 months to get to just literally 50 people using it day in, day out. Once we got to that, I was like, okay, cool. I feel really confident we've got something here that's sticky. Now let's go improve the onboarding process. Okay, now the onboarding process, we spent 6 months on that. The onboarding process is really dialed in. Now let's go worry about, like, how do we get more users for this thing? Which kind of did in parallel to the onboarding process. But okay, now that we've figured out all that, great. Now let's figure out how to charge money for it. And so I tend to like to do it in that order, because I think retention is the highest order bit. If you can get someone using your product day in, day out, you will find a way to monetize them. Almost always. It doesn't make sense to improve onboarding if your retention's bad. It doesn't make sense to monetize if you don't have a good growth engine. So that's my biggest thing, is like, do these things one at a time. And I also think lends itself well to like fundraising and stuff like this, because then you can kind of go to investors and say, like, hey, we're raising a little bit of money because we got this great idea. Our next milestone is 100 users using it day in, day out, or week in, week out. Great, we got to that number. Now our next thing is this. And you kind of get these natural milestones, because when you go to raising money or just build anything, it's almost sometimes better to have no metrics than like bad metrics, right? You almost feel like we've got no revenue. I suppose we have like really mediocre revenue, right? And so, anyways, that's been the biggest thing I've seen that's worked really well for me across all the business I've done.
Yeah, so very clear. So very clear. And I'm really getting the sense from you that quality is key in this. You want to make sure you have a quality process, quality products, quality onboarding, and then of course, then you can go and get more users. And so, well, I think you sound like you're firmly on your track to your 100 million with your 150 people. I think that's coming along the way. Richard, if anyone listening wants to get in contact with you or even use Fathom, where would they need to go?
Yeah, please check us out, Fathom.video. Again, sign up for free. Tell me what you think. You can find me on LinkedIn, message me there. Let me know your feedback on Fathom, or if you have any questions about entrepreneurship. A lot of my career, I will chalk up to cold emails from others that I've sent out being replied to. So I try to pay it back as much as I can.
That's beautiful. I really appreciate that. And from my perspective, you said sign up and use it. Tell me what you think. I've been using a competing product. I won't say their name. I've had frustrations with them in the last 4-6 weeks. Their customer service hasn't been helpful at all. And I come across a Fathom to test it out because once you're in with the product, you kind of don't want to switch, but they give me a reason to. And actually now I have switched across. I'm very thankful because the quality of meeting summary is so much better. Its ability to identify actions, that we've agreed on, it pulls it out in such a better way. So I'm very, very blessed. So other company, you stuffed up. You've lost one user now. So, and I think more will follow.
I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, I think, across most of the places we're winning on quality. Like if you go to G2, which is kind of like Yelp for user reviews, we just crossed over 5,000 reviews and we still have a perfect 5.0 rating. And part of that is we focus a lot on quality of the output. And the other part is actually we focus a lot on having really good customer support. We won't always get it right, and we can't always make everything as easy to use as we want to. I think this is one place companies massively underinvested, right? It's actually not that expensive to have a really good customer support experience, even for a free product. And I think it goes a long, long way in a world of word of mouth, right? We live, like, again, 30,000 products. Like, it only takes one bad experience for you to tell your friends, hey, I'll try that one, right? Because so important. So I'm glad it's working.
It's working. And I'm so glad that we've had you here. And I can certainly recommend it. So wherever you're listening, click in the show notes. There's a clickable link to Fathom.video and the details there on how to get in contact with Richard. Richard, I've been so blessed to have time with you today. Your insights have been fantastic. So I really thank you so very much. Do you have any final messages? Anything else you'd like to share?
Just wish everyone good luck. Stick to your gut. Things go great. Thanks for having me on, Kevin. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. It's been amazing. Thank you for tuning in to Leading to Profit. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It helps us to reach more leaders like you who are committed to maximizing their positive impact and profitability. Until next time, this is Kevin Bees. And remember, you stop leaking profit when you're engaged in leading to profit.